Captain Darius Voss stepped off the sleek, silver ramp of his diplomatic shuttle, his boots hitting the polished floor of the Veltheri Imperial Palace with a dull thud. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The Veltheri Dominion was one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, ancient, advanced, and dangerously close to war with humanity. His mission was simple in words but nearly impossible in execution: secure peace before war consumed them all. The palace itself was a marvel of alien design, towering crystal spires glowing with soft bioluminescent light, walls pulsing with veins of energy that ran like living circuits. The air smelled faintly of something metallic and sweet, a signature of Veltheri atmosphere processing. Darius adjusted his navy blue diplomatic uniform, ensuring the silver insignia of the United Earth Coalition gleamed under the floating chandeliers of liquid light. He had been briefed extensively. Veltheri were proud, formal, and easily offended. A single misstep could mean disaster. He had to be careful. A royal attendant, a tall four-armed alien with dark silver skin, gestured for him to follow. "The Emperor will see you shortly," the being said in a voice like rustling leaves. "You will wait in the moonlit chamber." Darius nodded and walked ahead, keeping his expression neutral. He had been in war zones, survived orbital bombardments, and faced down alien warlords. This, however, felt just as dangerous. One wrong word, and humanity could find itself at war with an empire that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. The attendant opened a set of tall, ornate doors, revealing a chamber bathed in soft blue light. Intricate designs swirled across the floor like starlit constellations, and at the center, a raised dais with a translucent water mirror shimmered under the glow. It was breathtaking. But there was one problem. Standing on the dais, surrounded by golden strands of floating light, was Princess HFY Velthar. And she was completely unclothed, her body adorned only with glowing ceremonial runes that pulsed in intricate patterns across her smooth violet skin. Darius froze. HFY turned her head sharply, her silver-white eyes widening in utter shock. Her delicate, crown-like headcrest flared slightly, a clear Veltheri response to extreme surprise. For a brief second, the two stared at each other, a human soldier diplomat and the heir to an alien empire, caught in a situation that neither of them could have ever prepared for. Darius immediately turned around, raising his hands. "Damn it, I didn't see anything," he said instinctively, though his brain was still catching up to what just happened. HFY's expression shifted from shock to horrified realization. The runes on her body flickered rapidly, as if responding to her emotions. "No," she hissed. You cannot unsee this. This is a sacred ritual of the royal bloodline." Darius frowned. "I swear, I didn't mean." The chamber's walls suddenly hummed with energy, and distant alarms began to blare. The realization hit Darius like a punch to the gut. He had just committed a crime, a grave, irreversible crime. HFY's voice was sharp with fury and panic. "You foolish human. By ancient Veltheri law, we are now bonded." Darius blinked. "Wait, what?" The doors behind him slammed open as armed Veltheri guards rushed in. The negotiation had officially turned into a disaster. And it was only just beginning. Darius Voss stood rigid as Veltheri guards surrounded him, their sleek energy weapons trained on his chest. The air crackled with tension. The blue glow of the moonlit chamber flickered erratically, as if the room itself understood the gravity of what had just happened. Princess HFY Velthar clutched the silken fabric of her ceremonial robe as she hastily wrapped it around herself. Her silver-white eyes burned with fury and disbelief. The sacred runes that had once pulsed with calm, regal energy now flickered wildly across her violet skin, reacting to her storm of emotions. "You do not understand what you have done, human," she spat, her voice sharp as a blade. Darius raised his hands in surrender. "Trust me, I really didn't mean to walk in here. This is all just a A violation of royal custom. One of the guards barked, his four-fingered hand tightening around his weapon. He has seen the princess in her sacred state. The law is absolute. Darius frowned. All right, hold on. Let's not get trigger-happy. There's got to be a way to fix this. Sci-fi exhaled sharply, pressing two fingers to her temple as if suppressing a headache. There is no fixing this, she muttered, her voice laced with frustration. You do not know our ways. In Velthari tradition, to witness the hair in the sacred ritual, unclothed and unguarded, is to be irrevocably bonded. Darius blinked. Wait, what? The chamber fell silent. Even the guards looked at each other uneasily. HFY's jaw tightened, and she took a step forward, eyes locked onto his. By Velthari law, you are now my betrothed. Darius felt his brain short-circuit. I'm sorry. What? One of the guards gritted his teeth. He is unworthy. He is human. Another voice, smoother and colder, cut through the rising tension. The law does not care. The crowd parted as Emperor Xalvator Velthar stepped into the room. His towering figure radiated power, his deep violet skin etched with golden ceremonial markings. His piercing silver eyes locked onto Darius like a predator sizing up prey. Behind him, the High Chancellor Virik, a sly and calculating Velthari noble, observed the situation with a look of amusement and disdain. The Emperor's voice was slow and deliberate. Captain Voss, you have made a grievous mistake. Darius stood tall, despite the heavy weight pressing on his shoulders. With all due respect, Your Majesty, it was an accident. I'll do whatever it takes to fix it, but an arranged marriage. That's a bit much, don't you think? Severa's expression darkened. You think I want this? She snapped. You are a human, a species we barely trust. I would rather bond with a Tarakian sand beast than be tied to you. Darius smirked despite himself. Well, you sure know how to make a guy feel special. The Emperor raised a hand, silencing the argument. The law is clear. There is no escaping this. But perhaps there is a way to make use of this misfortune. His gaze turned calculating. If this human is to be bound to our royal bloodline, then let him prove his worth. Virik's smirk deepened. A trial, he suggested smoothly, to determine if this outsider is fit to stand beside the princess. Darius clenched his jaw. He wasn't a politician, but he knew a trap when he saw one. Ihara folded her arms. Fine, she said coolly. Let him try. It will only prove that he does not belong here. Darius exhaled and straightened his stance. Great. First, a diplomatic mission. Now, a death trial. Things just kept getting worse. Darius Voss stood at the edge of a colossal dueling arena, his boots scraping against the smooth obsidian floor. Towering above him, thousands of Velthari nobles watched from the grandstands, their glowing silver eyes fixed on the human who dared to challenge tradition. The air hummed with tension. At the center of the arena stood Xavera Velthar, dressed in sleek combat armor, the royal insignia gleaming across her chest. Her expression was cold, unreadable. The challenge had been set. Darius had to prove himself worthy of the forced engagement, and that meant surviving whatever trial the Emperor had deemed fit. High Chancellor Virik stood beside the Emperor, his smirk barely hidden. Let us see if humanity is as strong as they claim, he said smoothly. With a wave of his hand, the floor of the arena shifted, revealing a massive metal gate on the far side. A deep, inhuman growl echoed from within. Darius sighed. Why is it never a written test? The gate slammed open, and a Velthari warbeast, a towering creature of muscle and armored scales, charged into the arena. Its four crimson eyes locked onto Darius, and a low, guttural snarl escaped its jagged maw. Darius barely had time to react before the beast lunged. He rolled to the side just as razor-sharp claws tore through the air where he had been standing. The crowd gasped, but he didn't have time to process it. The creature was fast, too fast. Sci-fi watched, arms crossed, expecting the human to fail quickly. But then something happened that she hadn't anticipated. Darius was smiling. He had fought in wars, survived ambushes, and taken down enemies twice his size. This wasn't diplomacy anymore. This was combat, and combat was where humans thrived. He dodged another swipe, grabbed a fallen spear from the arena floor, and drove it straight into the beast's exposed side. The war beast roared in pain, staggering back. The crowd gasped again, this time in surprise. Severa's eyes narrowed. He wasn't just surviving. He was winning. The war beast, now in rage, charged again. But Darius had already calculated its movements. At the last second, he sidestepped, using the beast's own momentum against it. It slammed into the wall with bone-crushing force, letting out a final pained growl before collapsing. Silence. Then, uproarious cheers. Darius turned toward the royal balcony, breathing heavily, gripping the spear tightly. He met the Emperor's gaze and gave a small, cocky salute. Vyric's smirk had disappeared. HFY, meanwhile, was staring at him with a mix of disbelief and something else. Something unreadable. The Emperor stood. "It seems," he declared, "that the human is not as weak as we assumed." But before anyone could react, a sharp explosion rocked the palace. The arena trembled. The cheers turned to screams. From the shadows, black-clad assassins emerged, moving with unnatural speed. Their energy blades hummed as they rushed toward the royal balcony, toward Sci-fi. Darius's instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, he sprinted forward. The trial was over. The real battle had just begun. The palace shook as another explosion ripped through the air. Smoke curled into the grand arena, and the cheers of the Velthari nobles had turned to screams of terror. The assassins moved like shadows, their black-clad forms flickering in and out of sight as they leaped toward the royal balcony. Their energy blades hummed with a deadly glow, slicing through guards with terrifying precision. Darius Voss didn't hesitate. His muscles burned from the fight with the war beast, but his mind was clear: protect the princess. Severa Velthar had already drawn her royal twin daggers, her violet skin illuminated by the burning embers of the shattered arena. Her silver-white eyes were narrowed, focused. She was no helpless royal. She was a warrior, but even she couldn't fend off a dozen trained assassins alone. Darius sprinted toward the chaos, grabbing a fallen Velthari shockblade from a dead guard. The weapon pulsed in his grip, its energy field crackling as he activated it. He had never used one before, but it didn't matter. A blade was a blade. One assassin lunged for Saigara, his dagger flashing toward her throat. She twisted gracefully, dodging the attack and driving her own blade into his side. The assassin crumpled, but two more took his place. Darius arrived like a storm. The first assassin barely had time to react before Darius's shockblade carved through his chest plate, sending him sprawling. The second swung wildly, but Darius caught his wrist, twisting it until the alien screamed. A well-placed kick sent him crashing over the balcony's edge. The Emperor stood tall behind them, his golden robes billowing, unfazed by the battle. High Chancellor Vyric, however, had retreated, slipping into the shadows. Coward. More are coming. Sci-fi shouted, blocking another strike. Darius ducked under a blade, countered with a swift uppercut, then drove his weapon straight through his attacker's torso. Human reflexes were faster than Velthari expected, and these assassins weren't ready for it. But there were too many. More assassins emerged from the smoke, surrounding the balcony. Their leader stepped forward, taller, clad in black armor etched with crimson markings. His face was hidden behind a sleek helmet, but his voice was sharp. "This charade ends now," the assassin commander hissed. "The Velthari bloodline will fall, and the human will die first." Darius wiped a streak of blood from his face. "Buddy, you're gonna have to get in line." The assassin commander moved with terrifying speed. 1 second he was across the balcony. The next, He was right in front of Darius, blade flashing toward his heart. Stivera shoved Darius aside, intercepting the strike with her own dagger. Sparks flew as their blades clashed. The assassin commander was strong, too strong. Darius rolled to his feet. His mind worked fast. He needed an opening. Something. His gaze flicked to a shattered plasma lantern on the balcony edge, still flickering with unstable energy. A plan formed. A reckless one. "Iva, get clear," Darius yelled. She hesitated, but trusted him. Darius grabbed the plasma lantern, ripped out the unstable power core, and hurled it directly at the assassin commander's chest. A blinding blue explosion erupted. The shockwave knocked everyone backward. The assassin commander was sent flying over the balcony's edge, vanishing into the depths below. For a moment, silence. Then, HFY turned to Darius, breathing hard. "You are insane." Darius grinned, still catching his breath. "You're welcome." But the danger wasn't over yet. In the distance, Velthari war horns began to sound. The real enemy was coming. Smoke curled from the ruined balcony, the scent of burning plasma thick in the air. Darius Voss adjusted his grip on the shock blade, his heart still pounding from the explosion. The assassin commander was gone, but the battle wasn't over. Across the palace, Velthari war horns blared, a deep, ominous sound that sent chills through the grand halls. It wasn't a call for victory. It was a warning. Sovera Velthar wiped blood from her cheek, her silver-white eyes scanning the battlefield below. The Velthari royal guard was assembling, their gleaming armor catching the light of distant fires. But something was wrong. Darius frowned. "They're not coming to protect you." Sovera's expression darkened. She saw it too. The guards were forming defensive lines, not against the assassins, but against her. And then High Chancellor Virik emerged from the shadows, his violet robes flowing as he stepped onto the shattered balcony. A slow, satisfied smirk played across his thin lips. Darius clenched his jaw. Of course, the slimy bastard was in on it. Virik clasped his hands behind his back. "Oh, Captain Voss, you wound me. You act as if I would ever betray my beloved empire." His eyes gleamed with amusement. "But tell me, do you really think this was a simple assassination attempt?" Sivera's grip on her daggers tightened. "You dare turn the royal guard against me?" Virik sighed dramatically. "Princess, you misunderstand. I have not turned them against you. I have simply removed an unfit ruler from power." His voice dropped into a whisper. "The people will believe anything if you give them a good enough story." Darius felt the pieces click into place. This wasn't just an attack. It was a coup. The Emperor, standing behind them, staggered suddenly, gripping his chest. His powerful form trembled, golden ceremonial runes flickering weakly across his skin. A low pain sound escaped his lips. Sivera's eyes widened. "Father." Virik smirked. "Ah, yes, the Emperor's sudden illness. Such a tragic tale." He tilted his head. "A slow, undetectable poison. Not strong enough to kill instantly, just enough to weaken him. And now, with you compromised by an outsider, the people will see you as unworthy to rule." Darius felt his blood boil. This was classic politics. Stab your enemies in the back and claim it was for the good of the people. But he wasn't about to let this smug alien snake win. Stivera stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You are a traitor to the throne." Virik raised an eyebrow. "No, princess. I am a savior." He gestured to the assembled royal guard, who now pointed their weapons at her and Darius. "You are outnumbered," Virik continued. "Surrender now, and I will allow you to live in exile. Resist, and you both die." Darius glanced at HFY. "Any chance we talk our way out of this?" Sivera's lips curled into a dangerous smile. "Not a chance." Darius sighed. "Figured." Then together, they attacked. Darius Voss moved first. Lightning reflexes, pure instinct. He snatched a fallen energy rifle from the ground, dropped to one knee, and fired a rapid burst at the nearest royal guard. The blue bolts slammed into armor, sending the soldier sprawling. Then everything erupted into chaos. Severa Velthar lunged forward, her twin daggers flashing. She moved like a phantom, weaving between the guards with precise, lethal grace. Her first strike severed a weapon hand. Her second sliced through a throat. The guards expected a princess. They got a warrior instead. But there were too many. Virik stepped back, hands clasped, watching with amusement. Such spirit, he mused. But the outcome is already decided. Darius didn't listen. He grabbed a fallen shock blade, deflected an incoming strike, then drove his boot into a guard's chest, sending him crashing into another. One down, 3 more coming. A blade whizzed past his ear, Saigara covering his blind spot. He grinned. They fought like they had trained together for years. But then, a heavy blast sent them both flying. Darius hit the ground hard, his vision blurring. His ribs screamed in pain, his breath ragged. Across from him, Severa struggled to her feet, her armor smoking from the impact. Virik's voice cut through the ringing in Darius's ears. Enough. Guards surrounded them again, their weapons trained. Too many this time. Even Severa couldn't fight them all. Darius spat blood and pushed himself up. So what now? He growled. You gloat. Drag us to some dungeon. Virik smiled coldly. No, Captain Voss. He nodded to the guards. Kill him. Severa's eyes flashed with fury. No. A guard raised his blaster, and a deafening explosion ripped through the palace. The outer walls collapsed as a Velthari assault ship crashed into the chamber, fire and debris raining down. The shockwave sent guards staggering. Then, figures emerged from the smoke. Not Velthari. Humans. Darius's heart leaped. The insignia on their armor was unmistakable. Terran Special Forces. A familiar voice crackled over the comms. Hope you didn't start the party without us, Captain. Darius laughed, despite himself. Kane, you magnificent bastard. Sergeant Kane Draven stormed through the breach, dual plasma pistols blazing. His squad followed, ripping through the stunned Velthari guards. Darius didn't hesitate. He grabbed Severa's arm. Time to go. She didn't argue. Virik vanished into the shadows as the battle erupted anew. Darius knew this wasn't over. But right now, they had one chance to escape. Severa turned to him as they sprinted. You called for backup. Darius smirked. Always have a backup plan. As the Terran dropship descended, engines roaring, Darius knew one thing. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. Darius Voss sprinted through the smoke-filled corridors, gripping his shock blade in one hand and Severa's wrist in the other. The palace was collapsing around them, massive stone pillars crumbling as the battle raged. Blaster fire flashed through the thick air, cutting down Velthari guards and echoing against the towering walls. Behind them, Sergeant Kane Draven and his Terran Special Forces squad pushed forward, their advanced armor gleaming with plasma burns. They had arrived just in time, but getting out would be the real challenge. Severa glanced over her shoulder. We need to reach the docking bay. She shouted over the chaos. Darius nodded. Kane, tell me you have a ship ready. Kane's voice crackled over the comms. Oh, we got a ship. Getting to it is the problem. Ahead, a massive steel door slammed shut, sealing off their path. 2 heavily armed guards stood in front, weapons raised. Darius didn't slow down. He tossed his shock blade at the first guard. It spun through the air, embedding itself into the alien's chest. The second barely had time to react before Severa was on him, her twin daggers flashing in a blur of silver. Darius retrieved his weapon as the door controls short-circuited under Kane's hacking device. The door groaned open, revealing the docking bay, and a fleet of enemy warships waiting outside. Darius cursed. Tell me that's not what I think it is. Kane scowled. That's an entire Velthari war battalion, Captain. They're blocking our escape. Severa's eyes darkened. Virik planned this. He knew I would try to run. Darius exhaled sharply. Then we don't run. Severa stared at him. You want to fight a battalion? He smirked. No, I want to steal their biggest ship. Kane grinned. Now you're talking. The nearest Velthari dreadnought was docked just beyond the landing platform. Massive, heavily armored, and equipped with weapons strong enough to punch through a blockade. Severa hesitated. That ship is top security. We'd never get inside. Darius tilted his head. We have you, don't we? For the first time that night. Severa smiled. Follow me, she said. The squad rushed forward, taking cover behind shipping crates as enemy forces poured into the docking bay. Darius fired off quick bursts from a stolen rifle, covering Severa as she accessed the dreadnought's control panel. Alarms blared. The Velthari guards realized what was happening. Kane barked over the comms. We're running out of time. Voss. Almost there. Severa muttered. Her fingers flew over the alien interface. A roar shook the ground as enemy fighters lifted off, preparing to fire. Darius gritted his teeth. Severa. The dreadnought's ramp hissed open. Severa turned, breathless. Get inside. Now. Darius grabbed her hand, leading the charge. As the squad rushed aboard, enemy fire slammed into the hull. The ship's controls lit up under Severa's touch. Engines roared to life. Darius slid into the co-pilot's seat, gripping the controls. All right, Princess, he said with a grin. Let's steal ourselves a warship. And with that, they blasted into the stars. The Velthari dreadnought shot through the chaos of battle, its engines roaring as it tore away from the palace docking bay. Enemy ships swarmed behind it, their sleek silver hulls glinting under the glow of the burning capital below. The war battalion had realized too late that their own flagship had been hijacked. Inside the control deck, Darius Voss gripped the pilot controls, his knuckles white as he pulled the massive warship into a steep climb. Warning lights flashed. Enemy lock-ons were lighting up the radar like a starstorm. Severa Velthar worked furiously at the console beside him, her fingers flying over the alien interface. Shields at 40%. We can't take a direct hit from those cannons. Kane Draven's voice barked over the comms. Captain, I hope you've got a plan because we've got 3 destroyers closing in. Darius grinned, even as enemy blasts rocked the ship. Yeah, I got a plan, he said. We fly straight at them. Severa stared at him. That's not a plan. That's suicide. Darius smirked. Only if they hit us. He punched the thrusters to full power. The dreadnought lurched forward, rocketing toward the blockade of warships ahead. Enemy fire rained down, glowing plasma bolts streaking past the hull. The dreadnought's shields flickered under the assault, but Darius didn't slow down. He pushed the engines harder, weaving through the deadly crossfire with the precision of a born pilot. Kane's squad fought off boarding attempts in the lower decks, blasting through Velthari soldiers who had tried to reclaim their ship. The battle inside was just as fierce as the one outside. Severa suddenly shouted, Darius, I have an idea. If we reroute power from weapons to the quantum drive, we might be able to. A direct hit slammed into the side of the dreadnought. Sparks erupted from the controls. The ship pitched sideways, alarms blaring. Darius cursed. That was too close. Then, another warning flashed on the screen. They're charging their main cannons, Severa whispered. Darius glanced at the 3 looming destroyers, their enormous plasma barrels glowing with energy. He exhaled slowly. There was only one way out. He locked eyes with Severa. Divert power to the quantum drive. She hesitated. If I do that, we'll have no weapons. If we get hit, we won't. She stared at him for a heartbeat, then nodded sharply. Her fingers moved fast. Rerouting now. The ship shuddered as power drained from the weapons into the FTL drive. The quantum core hummed to life, a blue energy field crackling around the dreadnought's frame. The Velthari destroyers fired. Darius punched the drive activation. A blinding flash erupted as the dreadnought vanished into the void, just before the enemy blasts tore through the space where they had been. Silence. Then, stars stretched back into view. Darius exhaled. Tavera's hands trembled on the console. Kane's voice crackled through. We made it." Darius grinned. "Yeah, we made it." But Tavera's expression remained troubled. "Virik won't stop," she whispered. "This war isn't over." Darius's grin faded. He knew she was right. It was only just beginning. The stolen Velthari dreadnought drifted in the quiet void of deep space, its hull still scorched from the battle. Inside the command deck, Darius Voss leaned forward, staring at the holographic display. The map flickered, showing the distant glow of Velthari Prime, the heart of the Empire and the place where Virik waited. Kane Draven crossed his arms. "Tell me we're not going back there." Sci-fi Velthar, standing at the central console, looked at them both, her violet eyes burning with determination. "We have to." Darius sighed, rubbing his temples. "Severa, we barely made it out alive. Now you want to fly straight into the lion's den." She turned to face him. "Virik won't stop hunting us. He will hunt you, your people, and anyone who helped us. He wants my throne, and if he gets it, the entire Velthari Empire will turn against humanity." Her voice hardened. "If we strike now, we can end this before the war truly begins." Silence filled the room. Kane let out a low whistle. "So, just to be clear, you want to storm the most secure palace in the Empire, overthrow your traitor of a cousin, and survive?" Severa's lips curled into a dangerous smirk. "Yes." Kane grinned. "All right, let's do it." Darius shook his head with a chuckle. "You two are insane." He turned back to the controls. "But if we're doing this, we do it right. We take him by surprise." Severa's fingers flew over the control panel. "I have access codes to the palace's stealth hangars. If we use them, we can land undetected." Darius grinned. "Perfect. Let's go crash a coronation." The Velthari capital loomed ahead, its vast golden spires rising into the planet's stormy atmosphere. The dreadnought, now cloaked, slipped past patrol ships, undetected. Inside, the team prepared for battle. Kane and his squad loaded Terran pulse rifles, their armor reinforced with salvaged Velthari plating. Hexivera secured her twin daggers, strapping them to her belt. Darius checked his weapon, then turned to her. "Last chance to change your mind, Princess." Sci-Vera smirked. "Not a chance." The ship landed in the stealth hangar, and they moved quickly, silent, precise, deadly. They slipped through the palace corridors, taking out guards with swift strikes. The throne room was ahead, where Virik awaited. As they reached the entrance, the doors burst open. Virik stood on the throne steps, flanked by his elite guard. His dark robes flowed like shadows, his cruel smile sharp. "I knew you would come," he said. His eyes glowed with unnatural power. "You should have stayed dead." Sci-Vera stepped forward, daggers drawn. "You took my home. Now, I take it back." The battle erupted. Blades clashed. Energy bolts filled the air. Kane's squad fought hard, covering Darius and Texivera as they pushed forward. Virik moved like a phantom, striking with terrifying speed. But Texivera was faster. Their blades met in a furious storm of sparks. Darius took out the last of the guards, then turned just in time to see Sci-Fi's dagger pierce Virik's chest. The traitor gasped. His eyes widened in shock. Sci-Fi leaned in, whispering, "This is for my family." With a final strike, it was over. The throne was hers again. Darius grinned. "Well, that was fun." Sci-Fi smirked. "You Terrans really are full of surprises." Kane chuckled. "You have no idea." The war was over before it began. Humanity and the Veltheri would not be enemies. Because of one rogue pilot, a warrior princess, and a team that refused to back down. And the galaxy would never forget it.